Well, Shabbat Shalom to all of our family and friends. This is Torah Talks with Tony and Bill. I'm Tony. This is Bill. Some of you guys know him as Rabbi Son. I know him as Papa B. We are so excited about what the Lord is saying to us in this season. And I know you are too. Again, don't forget to pray for our country and those who are affected by the decisions we make in this country. when we when we were here last, we were going into the Thanksgiving season, and Papa B and I shared hopefully some encouraging words to you to prepare you to interact with your families, and hopefully that was a beautiful occasion, and you got to love on your family and be that light and shine in the midst of them. So hopefully that was a good thing, and we encourage you to continue to interact with your family, keep up with them if you can, be there for them, be present when you're communicating with them, be able to listen. So we want to get back into this topic on this circumcision type movement that's taking place in the earth and have been taking place for quite a while. We feel like now it's intensifying. Of course, I remember when the Lord gave me this word, it was right off of another prophetic flow that the Lord had given me about this season and how He was going to release wind of change into this season, and how we were going to see even the unbelievers swept into this movement. And so we've been seeing a lot of things happen along that course, and again, it's exciting to see what the Lord is doing. We've been talking about circumcision, and my heart have been experiencing this every time we talk about it. I experience it. I'm actually living that word every day on my job, within my family, and things of that nature. So I know that, or I feel that the Lord is not just talking to us and moving through our lives, but I believe that He's also talking to you and moving in your life as well. When we enter into this today, I want to enter in through Colossians 3, chapter 8, verses 8 through 11. I want to read some of that before we get back into the areas of operation. And so this is concerning the new man, circumcision, putting off and putting on. That was when Papa B introduced that concept to us, and it was going into that Thanksgiving season where he was saying, we are gonna have to put off some things, but we also have to put on some things. And this scripture alludes to that. He says, now you yourselves are to put off all these. And then he goes to talk about those things: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy language out of your mouth. Do not lie one to another, since you have put off the old man with his deeds, and have put on the new man, who is renewed in yada according to the image of him who created him, where there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcised nor uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave nor free, but Messiah is all and in all. Therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved, here's some things we put on. It says, put on tender mercies, kindness, humility, meekness, long suffering, bearing with one another, and forgiving one another. If anyone has a complaint against another, even as Messiah forgave you, so you also must do. He says, but above all these things, put on love, which is the bond of perfection, and let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to which also you are called in one body, and be thankful. Let the word or teachings of the Messiah dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your hearts to the Lord. And whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Yeshua, giving thanks to God the Father through him. One of the things that I've been looking over this, and this morning when I was meditating, when I got to this part about the contrast. So when we contrast the circumcision with the uncircumcised, it says the uncircumcised Philistines. Then it gives some examples: barbarous, flesh obsessed, appetite driven, proud, arrogant, boastful, oppressive, profane, those are things that we put off, right? As we put on this new man, these are things that we put off. But this is what we'll see in the uncircumcised. This is the behavior, this is the manifestation, this is the result of individuals that have not began to undergo this circumcision type movement. And so the areas of operation which will keep us from operating within this realm of being flesh obsessed, that kind of stayed in my mind. Appetite driven, and that's the world that we see right now, Papa B, including ourselves. We tend to drift in and out of that, of being driven by our appetites.
This scripture that we've read from Colossians, it would take years to unpack all the unique, specific things, and everyone is like a laser point that is designed to cut into the flesh, but to awaken something in the heart. I mean, I think that's the most important thing we could try to explain to everybody about this word, about the circumcision. The goal is not circumcision. The goal is beauty and fruitfulness and the kingdom of heaven arising and awakening and being roaring like a lion out of people, but a lion that is a head of a tribe who watches over the world, watches over the kingdom, watches over and means the best and protects and defends. And I think that's the thing. Don't focus on the cutting. The cutting is essential, a part of it, a component of it. But the goal is beautiful and glorious. And our king is holding the scalpel, or holding the laser, as it would be, saying, you're going to be very glad this happened. You're not going to be sitting there wounded and sorrowful saying, oh, what horrible things have happened. Now, one thing that you did mention that I wanted to address slightly was with regard to the uncircumcised. You mentioned the uncircumcised, barbarian, flesh-driven, appetite-driven, flesh-controlled, obsessed. The problem that I see is not that. That's always been here, and it always has existed, and it's sort of why we're here. It's why we need a circumcised people to come forth. The bigger problem that we're going to deal with in the next few months and maybe even a couple of years is what I call the aborted circumcision. That's whenever the Holy One takes his needle, or he takes his laser, he takes his scalpel, and he begins to address a certain area of our flesh, and we say no. Or we get up in the middle of the circumcision and we react against it. And so this is, and it's a phase. It is a phase. He will have a people who will honor him. He will have a people who will be a delight to the rest of the world, and a joy and a source of peace and a source of hope and a source of companionship and unity. I don't mean a forced unity. I'm talking about a unity because we're all together with him. And so there will be this people, but there will be in us, in some of your friends, maybe your family, maybe you, in some of us, we will have this reaction to the initial cutting. You know, in the world of modern, well, not modern, of the 70s and 80s music, there was a song called "The First Cut is the Deepest" in the secular realm. Well, in the kingdom, it's really not so. In the kingdom, the first cut is actually the gentlest. It's the deeper cuts that keep going, and he keeps going deeper and deeper to take more and more of the flesh out. It is not that we are somehow being punished or hated or hurt by this. It is that he sees so much more potential in us than we have had. And one more illustration, I'll give this back to your next discussion. Look, my mother's family, her maiden name was Birnbaum, okay? And they came from Poland, Germany, that area over there. And to the Germans, what that name means is pear tree. Baum is tree, and Birn is pear. And so if you've ever tried to grow a pear tree, then this will hopefully mean something to you, because pear trees grow crazy. They grow like crazy, and they will put out limbs everywhere, in every direction, going every which way. they produce limbs like crazy, and you have to really manage a pear tree. And if you really want to see the beauty of the pear come forth and the years of harvest of pears that will feed the people, that will be the sweet, sweet fruit that they are, you have to trim. You have to trim and make sure those limbs don't get in each other's way, and they don't suck up the energy and misrepresent what they're supposed to be and turn into an ornamental as opposed to a fruit-bearing tree. And that's really where I think this whole issue of the circumcision that we're talking about is. Please understand, he absolutely desires to do great things in you and through you. And he knows that to be productive, certain areas need to be cut, some deeper than others, but all for your good and for the good of the world.
Thank you. Wow. Um, the picture that came to my heart when you were talking about, um, don't really focus on the pain, the circumcision itself, but the purpose, right? I thought about Yeshua and in Hebrews where it says we look unto him, right? The author and the finisher of faith. He's our example. He shows us how to walk through this thing. And he says, for the joy that was set before him, right? He endured. Right? He endured the cross, the suffering, the shame, all that came with that, but for the joy that was set before him. And so what you're showing us and what you're sharing with us is, even though this process sometimes is painful and it's agonizing at times, but what about the joy? What if we set our focus on the joy that is set before us? What is the purpose? Where is he taking us? One prophetic word that I've been reading talked about how the believers were going to break forth in this season, and all the beautiful things the Lord was going to do in our hearts and in our lives, and the things he was going to bring forth. And those were some of the things that the Lord showed me as well, back when this first came out. And so I believe that if we could just focus on the joy, if we could, and I know sometimes that's difficult, right? Because it's easier said than done in some situations. But if we could focus on the joy that is set before us and endure this process, then, oh my goodness, what awesome and glorious potential that will come out of it.
Which leads us in the next segue into the next area of this mass ecclesiastical circumcision that the Creator is really working on right now, and Yeshua is holding the scalpel for, and that's the eyes. What do you see? One of the, if you ever think about it, a lot of what he said to, especially to his prophetic people, was, what do you see? Jeremiah, what do you see? And the key factor was to work from what you see with your natural eyes, because that'll really tick you off, or really offend you, or it'll cause the dark energy of fear or hatred or self-righteous indignation to come up in you. If you look at what you see with your eyes, then you have this problem. So he says, I want you to learn, if you're going to be my people, my prophetic people, to see beyond what you see with your natural eyes. Look, you're going to see people behaving badly. And if you fixate on that, then you're going to be one angry, offended person. And it's like you said a moment ago, sometimes it's difficult in some circumstances to maintain joy. And he says, no, it's really not, but it all depends upon what you choose to look at and what you choose to see. So we're talking about the circumcision of the eyes. We're talking about the cutting away of the excess flesh that surrounds our organs of vision, our nerve endings, the way in which we react to that which comes before us, we perceive, and how we perceive it. And if we understand that he really wants us to see things in a way that will bring kingdom purposes to bear, then we have to realize we got to put off some things that we can see, that we have been seeing, that people around us like to talk about seeing, and saying that's not what we're here to look at. The circumcision of our eyes is to take us to a deeper place. I'm going to give you just another example. I'm kind of full of examples today because I've been seeing stuff. And I hope these illustrations will be of some benefit to you and to your family and to others who are watching. And here's the situation. I was driving yesterday on a business matter. And if y'all in this area, in this part of the world, yesterday was extremely cloudy, windy, and just waves of clouds. And it was dark, dark, dark. We're getting in a season of that right now. Dark day during the day. And I'm driving down the road, and all of a sudden I see up in front of me, there's one of those places where the road just spreads out for, a mile or 2 miles down a little hill, and you can see it. And in the lower part, in the hill, in the valley part, there was sunshine. I wasn't in the sunshine, but there was sunshine in the valley. And so I'm saying, okay, this is really cool. And I look up to my left, and I see, because where the sun was, and I saw one little hole in the cloud banks. The entire sky was dark and filled with black clouds. But there was one little spot, and out of that, you could see the beams of the sun coming. But the wind, I told you, the wind was blowing. And so as I'm driving into this light, all of a sudden, it's almost like the wind and the clouds just begin to circle and close on that window of light. And I was so fascinated by it as I'm driving down the road. Fortunately, there was no traffic, so I wasn't endangering anybody. But I just began to stare into that hole. And what you could see was not only the clouds that you see on the surface that were about to cover this light hole were there on the surface, but way beyond it, there were a series of different cloud structures that were much more beautiful and glorious. And then behind it was the blue sky and the sun shining brightly. And he says, do you understand the levels? Do you understand the different things that are available to be seen if you have eyes to see? And you are not shrouded by the darkness, which is the representation of your flesh. So we cut away the circumcision around the eyes, the flesh around the vision that we have. Then we can begin to see the more beautiful things, the more perfect things, the designed things, the things that bring light and health and hope into situations. There is a joy factor in every trial. We have to find it. There is a peace in every turmoil. We just have to be able to find it, look for it. And that's the key. There's one of the things that the scriptures that I put down here on our page with regard to eyes is that, I will not look upon a maid. I will not look upon any vile thing. It's just a covenant with my eyes. I made a covenant with my eyes. We need to make a covenant with our eyes that whatever happens before us, whatever we see happening around us, we will continue to look for the joy set before us. Because the joy set before us is not independent of these things. It will grow out of these things. And that's the key factor. We can find this key to the joy. And that's what he's trying to do with us in this season, Tony, and all of our friends, is if we will let him, he will begin to show us the beautiful things, even in the darkness, even in the turmoil, even in the trials, even in the pain, even in the injustice, even in the hatred, even in the prejudice, even in all the things that are out there. He will begin to show us the beautiful things, and we begin to, for the joy set before us, we'll press into those, not into the negativity of what's going on around us.
And that's, I guess that's where the challenge is when, and this is the reason the circumcision is so important, is because that burden becomes lighter when we allow these things to be cut away. There's a purpose in that, right? So you were talking about, it's not just about the cutting away, but it's about what comes forth out of that. And so our ability to see and our ability to look for the things that will bring joy and the things that are part of what the Lord's prophetic destiny is for that situation. I'm thinking about people right now. And so because we interact so much, right, with other humans, the tendency is to see that which is we call bad, or if you want to use that word, but to see that which is unpleasant, right, and to become fixated on that, and I see it all the time, and it happens with me. Sometimes I'm looking at a person, and then there was a presentation that comes, and all of a sudden this thing in me is triggered, right? And I want to do something about what I just saw.
That is the abortion of the circumcision right there.
Good. Okay. Okay. And so that's where I think a lot of us are, is that we want to do something about what we're seeing. Sometimes we want to even attempt to fix the other person. And that's, I think that's what I want you to speak to, is because you've spoken a lot to us as a group about those things, about looking at people and making judgment calls and getting involved in these arguments and political things, when really that's not the issue, right? And what you've done a lot of teaching on is look beyond that, right? Because that's so maybe we see someone acting out, but what's really the case? What should we see? And I remember when you were going over the mitzvahs with us, you was talking to us about these things. You said we have to see, when we look at the commandments, let's not limit that to a book of rules, and yeah. But what is he saying to us? This is who we are. This is our prophetic. This is our identity. And so instead of saying to someone, I'm so hurt that you are a liar, that you lie, and that blah, 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 blah. Hold on. That's not who the Lord designed him to be, right? And so if we're looking beyond what we're seeing right here and look to what he designed us to be and speak to that, even in our children, because we get disappointed, right? Our children don't seem to go the direction we want them to go. And we're tempted to start saying things about that we're seeing because maybe we aborted that circumcision.
Yeah, that is so real, honest about what happens and how it begins to damage you, and then damage your relationships, and then negate your purpose and diminish your impact. I mean, we are designed to have such great impact, but to have such great impact, what we have to do is be able to see things and see people and see circumstances and see situations through his eyes of redemption, of restoration, of hope, of purification. That's the process. Now, Yeshua, his teaching is brilliant, and we sometimes overlook it. He said that if your eye is good, then your whole being will be flooded with light. He just described for you the result of the circumcision of the eyes. He says, but if your eye is evil, which in Hebrew terms only means self-obsessed, narcissistic, based upon your vision, your perspective, your ideology, your emotions, if your eye is that, then you will be filled with darkness. That dark energy will consume you. Negativity will take place. Anger, offense, wrath, fear, depression, sadness, judgmentalism, withdrawal, isolation. These things, and you begin to use labels at people. You begin to throw around labels that sound really important when you say them, but are the exact opposite of what God created in this person. Oh, be careful when you throw around a label, because now it means you have seen this person through the serpent's eyes, not through the Creator's eyes. Well, this old issue of the good eye. The good eye is this vision of being able to see somebody else the way God created them to be, and the way in which they are designed to function, and the beauty and the creativity and the fruitfulness and the place and the overall plan that the Creator has designed for them to fulfill. Now, that is a beautiful thing. We want that. But we have to put off some things. The things we have to put off with regard to our eyes are seeing critically, seeing judgmentally, seeing immediate behavior, temporal situations, listening to and seeing what other people see because of their words, especially the media is bad about this, but our friends sometimes are. Hey, heck, our pastors sometimes are. Our rabbis may be. That don't take at face value and see what they try to tell you to see, unless they're trying to tell you to see what God has
Yeah,
created and ordained.
absolutely. When and I know we've been talking about this for a while, so at some point we're going to circle back through, because I want Papa B to go back and talk to us about what how is this circumcision type experience, how is this administered to the body in today's time, because oftentimes you'll hear him say we're not talking literal circumcision. For those who are literalists, we don't want to get into that. So from time to time, I'm going to have probably circle back through and remind us what we're talking about and how you can experience this and how you may already be experiencing it, but may have not identified it as this, as such. This is the prophetic terminology, so to speak, that he gave us to kind of introduce you to what's happening, or to enlighten you about what's happening. But kind of want probably to stay with that, because as you know, we get into this and it's good stuff, but sometimes we forget that maybe others are watching, and maybe you tuned in later than others and you didn't hear how this is taking place.
Well, and that's a great point, and I'm glad you brought that up, Tony, because we tend to get lost in the beauty of what we're talking about at the moment, and forget that you still have to have a roadmap and a way of interacting with God to be able to enjoy, or at least recognize, this is happening in you. And so I will tell you that he uses basically a laser scalpel to do this, that has 4 different lights to it. And a different context I teach on this is the 4 revelation streams. Okay. And so understand that he has a way to touch you with this circumcision. You don't have to go somewhere to get it. You don't have to go to some pastor, preacher, evangelist, prophet, apostle, to get this particular level of circumcision, because this is what he's intending to do with all of his people. And he's active in doing it. Now, he'll use the 4 revelation streams, or the 4 laser beams, whichever way you want to rephrase it. What's the first one? Creation. He'll, just like today. I mean, if you just walk outside in North America today, South America, you got south of the hemisphere, southern hemisphere, you might have some different things to look at, but it will be a change. There's a shifting going on in the environment, just in the physical aspects of creation. What you're seeing, today I walked outside for my morning walk, and the pecan trees and the oak trees, well, the oak trees still have their leaves, but pecan trees that are in my yard and down my street, last night they lost all their leaves. We had a storm blow through. We had wind, we had rain, we had whatever. And yesterday, these trees were full of leaves. Today, there are no leaves. They have entered into their season now of getting back to who they are, for the purpose they are, getting energy for the next growth season. That's a circumcision, okay? If you understand, just creation is telling you this is happening. As he's doing it with the realm of created order, he is so doing it in his people. And you begin to feel that things are falling off of you. Fleshly things are falling off of you. That's part of it. Second thing is the Torah itself. The Torah, as you read the Torah, this is one reason we read. It's never say, God's not circumcising me with a closed book. I mean, I'm waiting for him to sit. Here I am. No, he circumcises us through the second revelation stream, which may be the purest of all revelation streams as it comes down to it, with more specificity. And through right now we're in the Parsha of Vayeshev, and we're in the issues of the stories of Joseph. And Joseph's imprisonment, Joseph's false accusations against Joseph, and how he's being taken. Everything is taken. His robe was ripped off of him. He was circumcised of his robe, coat of many colors, as we talk about it. He was circumcised of his Hebrew language. He was circumcised of his place in the family. He was taken away from all the things that seemed to be so important to him. Torah is telling us the story, saying, "This is what I'm doing," and he says, "But you see what I'm going to do with Joseph? If you knew what I was going to do with Joseph, if you knew how this redemption story was going to work out, for the joy set before you, you would come forth in this process." And so this issue of the second revelation stream, the third revelation stream, is the prophetic word. The prophetic words will come forth, and you will get, and it may not sound like, "Thus saith the Lord." You may be listening to somebody talk and say, "That word, that hit my heart." And now I understand. And the fourth one is life experiences. As we experience things, we'll say that didn't work. And one thing about the trips we made on Thanksgiving, and I hope you did get to spend some time with your families on Thanksgiving. I obviously hope for your own sake and for your family's sake that it went really well and you learned something. But if it didn't, if there were trials, if there were difficulties, use it as a learning experience. This is a revelation stream. This is a laser beam. All these experiences that we deal with in life, even when we fail, are designed to say, okay, let's don't do that again. That didn't work. That was not an effective means of handling situations and people in this process, and not to repeat the same mistakes again. So this is the 4 ways in which the Holy One brings about this circumcision.
Well, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us today. My prayer is that circumcision is taking place in your life through those 4 revelation streams. We invite you to come to Biblical Lifestyle Center and share with us in our Torah studies. Awesome place to be, awesome experiences you'll have. And so again, we invite you to come out. We want to say, don't forget to pray for our country and those who are affected by the decisions we make. Until next time, Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.